Melinda is immediately presented as this hardworking, no-nonsense woman with a lot on her plate. She's quiet and introspective, but clearly carries some emotional weight. Melinda's life wasn't easy. She lost her mother at a young age, leaving her with a significant inheritance. Losing a parent is not just a surface-level event, it fundamentally shapes who Melinda becomes. She's searching for emotional security, a role model, and someone to take care of her, all things that she hopes to find in Robert later. We see her as a woman who, despite her independence and wealth, is emotionally fragile and deeply insecure. Robert, played by Lyric Bent, is the classic dreamer. He's charming, intelligent, but he's also reckless with his ambitions. Robert is charismatic and ambitious, all of which quickly draw Melinda in. He speaks with confidence, and there's a certain smoothness to his demeanor. He knows how to navigate conversations, and it's this charm that draws Melinda in. They met in college, and despite Melinda's sisters warning her that Robert might not be the best choice, she's completely swept up in love. Robert is shown to be smooth and persuasive. He's not just interested in Melinda because of her looks or wealth, but because he sees in her a woman who is willing to support him unconditionally. Melinda's attraction to Robert feels immediate, and it's layered with her vulnerability. She is drawn to him because he offers her the kind of emotional connection she's been missing since her mother's death. In him, she sees hope, potential, and the dream of a future that feels stable and loving. The inheritance becomes both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it gives her financial independence, but on the other, it places her in a precarious position when she later invests it all in Robert's dreams, takes on a huge burden for him. And you can see how her entire identity starts to revolve around Robert. Melinda doesn't just fall for Robert, she sacrifices everything for him. And I'm not talking small sacrifices. The movie makes you feel like Melinda's relationship with Robert is destined for disaster from the get-go. They fall in love fast, but you can already sense the tension building under the surface. Robert is obsessed with his invention, a revolutionary battery that he's convinced will make them millions. But that obsession starts to cloud everything else. Soon they get married, but it's not your typical love story. Instead of a happy honeymoon phase, we quickly see the cracks. Robert's invention consumes him, and Melinda is left picking up the pieces. She drains her entire inheritance to support his dreams. Imagine giving up everything for someone else's ambitions, especially when they can't even hold down a steady job. We see Robert constantly struggling to make his battery invention work. He believes in it wholeheartedly, but the years drag on, and it feels like he's making no progress. Meanwhile, Melinda is watching her bank account drain, and her patience is being tested. This is the first major point of tension in their relationship. Melinda's inner conflict starts brewing here. She loves Robert, but she's starting to feel the weight of her sacrifices. It's the beginning of a slow burn. Melinda's sisters are skeptical of Robert from the beginning. They warn her, sensing that he may not be the best match for her, particularly given how easily she seems to be falling for him. The sisters serve as the rational counterbalance to Melinda's emotional involvement. They see what Melinda doesn't, that Robert may be using her, or at least taking advantage of her vulnerability. Their early warnings are an important setup because they reflect a sense of foreshadowing. The fact that Melinda quickly becomes defensive when her sisters question Robert's intentions is a key moment in this early portion of the film. It shows her unwillingness to see Robert for who he really is, partly because she needs to believe that he's worth the emotional risk. This defensiveness is also a sign of how deeply Melinda has already invested herself in Robert. To admit that her sisters might be right would be to admit that her feelings for him are misguided, something she's not ready to confront. Her love for Robert is intense, but it's also rooted in a desire to fill the void left by her mother's death. She's lonely, she's yearning for love, and she wants to believe in someone who seems to offer her the stability she craves. It's easy to root for her, even though we know deep down that things are going to take a darker turn. Melinda is starting to sacrifice for Robert. She's already sacrificing her emotional well-being and her relationships with her family. Robert's influence over Melinda is starting to become apparent. He's not overtly controlling or manipulative, but he's already positioning himself as the center of her world. Robert's obsession with creating his battery is depicted as both admirable and problematic. While he believes wholeheartedly in the success of his invention, his pursuit begins to take a toll on his marriage. Melinda stands by Robert for years, but she becomes increasingly frustrated as their financial situation worsens. Her trust and patience begin to fray as she continues to invest her money and emotional energy into Robert's dreams. A pivotal moment occurs when Melinda discovers that Robert has been in contact with another woman, Diana Wells, whom he met years earlier. This discovery ignites Melinda's jealousy and plants the seeds of distrust in their marriage. Though Robert insists that there's nothing inappropriate between him and Diana, Melinda's suspicions grow. This scene is critical because it sets the stage for the emotional spiral that follows. As time passes, Melinda becomes increasingly bitter. Her resentment toward Robert builds, and her patience is at its limit. She feels unappreciated, exhausted from years of sacrifice, and still has little to show for it. Robert's continual failure to secure a deal for his battery only worsens the tension between them. At this point, the movie shows Melinda's mental and emotional decline in a series of intense scenes where she confronts Robert about his inability to provide for her after all these years. The theme of jealousy runs deep throughout the movie. Melinda's emotional state becomes more volatile as her trust in Robert deteriorates. Her sisters try to intervene again, but Melinda refuses to listen to their advice, driven by her desire to salvage her marriage and recoup the losses she has endured. Melinda's rage and jealousy reach a boiling point as she becomes fixated on the idea that Robert is cheating on her, or at the very least, taking her for granted. After one last major confrontation, Melinda decides she has had enough and files for divorce. The emotional weight of this decision is immense. She feels both liberated from the burdens of her failed marriage and devastated by the collapse of the life she envisioned. Robert, while heartbroken, seems to move on, leaving Melinda to deal with the wreckage of their relationship. This moment is critical as it marks the transition from a woman scorned to a woman driven by revenge. After their divorce, Robert's fortunes suddenly take a dramatic turn for the better. His invention is finally picked up by a major corporation, and he becomes a wealthy man almost overnight. This twist is gut-wrenching for Melinda. After years of supporting him through failure after failure, Robert's success comes at the exact moment when she is no longer a part of his life. This is one of the film's most poignant moments. Melinda watches as Robert prospers without her, living the life she had dreamed of with him, only now he's sharing it with someone else, Diana. The juxtaposition of Melinda's despair with Robert's newfound happiness is heartbreaking. Melinda sees everything she sacrificed and endured, only for another woman to reap the benefits. As Robert's life improves, Melinda's emotional state continues to decline. She becomes obsessed with the idea that she has been wronged. In her mind, Robert owes her not just money, but her life back. She can't let go of the notion that she built Robert's success and that he should be with her. The film does an excellent job of portraying Melinda's descent into obsession. She begins to stalk Robert and Diana, convinced that she deserves a piece of the life they are now sharing. Melinda's obsessive behavior intensifies. She confronts Robert and demands that he repay her for everything she has done for him. She wants him to leave Diana and return to her, but Robert refuses. The psychological tension in this sequence is palpable. Melinda's anger has now fully transformed into rage. She feels utterly betrayed, and the film visually represents this through increasingly chaotic and violent imagery. By this point, Melinda has lost all sense of reason. Her sisters try once again to intervene, but Melinda is too far gone. She's consumed by the belief that she has been cheated out of the life that was rightfully hers. The breakdown of her mental state is depicted through a series of intense scenes where Melinda's actions become more erratic and destructive. She's no longer just angry. She's driven by a desire to destroy the life that Robert has built without her. One of the most intense moments in the film occurs when Melinda confronts Diana directly. The tension between the two women is explosive, with Melinda accusing Diana of stealing her life. This confrontation highlights the deep themes of jealousy, betrayal, and revenge that have been building throughout the film. It's a critical turning point as Melinda fully commits to her quest for vengeance. Here are some engaging questions for my wonderful viewers of this acrimony recap during or after the movie to spark reflection, conversation, and debate. Please leave your answers in the comment section. Thank you. 1. How do you feel about Melinda's sense of entitlement to Robert's success? Do you think she's right in believing she deserves part of his fortune after their divorce? 2. Do you think Melinda was justified in supporting Robert for so long? At what point, if any, should she have walked away? 3. Do you believe Melinda's obsession with getting back at Robert was fueled by genuine betrayal, or was it more about revenge? 4. Do you think Robert took advantage of Melinda's love for him, or was he simply focused on his own ambitions without realizing the toll it took on her? 5. In your view, who is more at fault for the collapse of the marriage, Melinda or Robert? Or do you think both share equal blame?